Good day, viewers, and welcome once again to the Bible Speaks. Last week, our sleeping giant decided to come awake, and so many around the world have heard our cries. So many around the world have felt our pain, and they have come alongside us, and they continue to bear our burdens. They continue to bear our burdens. We're at Galatians chapter 6, verse 1 to verse 5. Again, Paul says, if any man be overtaken in a fault, he commands those who are spiritual to do some restoration in the spirit of meekness. Also considering thyself, lest I also be tempted. And we are zeroing in and we are focusing on verse 2, where Paul says to bear one another's burden and so fulfill the law of Christ. So we're talking about burden bearing. Burden bearing, that's what we're focusing on. Bearing one another's burden. Because I continue to stress and I continue to reiterate that when the gospel of Jesus Christ is properly understood, when it's properly understood, when we wouldn't have an expert knowledge of it, but when we come to understand what the gospel of Christ is all about, it is going to elevate our thinking, our attitude, and our behavior towards one another. In our discussion on bearing burdens, again, we want to stress, we want to reiterate, we want to say over and over again, based on our present situation and our present circumstances, now is not the time for us to be callous, for us to be cruel. Those behaviors, those actions are uncalled for. Not just right now, but anytime. They're uncalled for. You see, now is not the time for us to behave like, our life is so meaningless that we have to be relevant by preying on the misfortune of others. Now is not the time for that. Now is not the time to light up your Facebook page. And no, now is not the time. It is time that we strive to bear one another's burden on a huge scale, a large scale. So the question again is, how do we do that? What would it look like for Vincentians to bear one another's burden? That's the question we've been asking. And we said as a nation, we need to see ourselves as an agent of God's love. To understand and to recognize that God didn't pour out his love on us so that we can just store it up and keep it to ourselves. But so that we could be a conduit through which God's love can be poured now, out to others. Yes, we've seen this in scriptures. But guess what? We are all now experiencing it. We experienced it before. And we're experiencing now the outpouring of love in the form of humanitarian relief and support from those who, are not even Vincentians. Who are not Vincentians. So in light of that, in light of what is going on, I'm saying to us, I'm pleading, I'm beseeching, I'm begging, it's time to tap into our love because it's there. It's time to tap into our support for one another. And let us continue to strive to look for ways and means to bear one another's burden. I understand and I recognize and I see a lot out there has been doing it. Been going from shelter to shelter, dropping stuff here, doing this, doing that. I'm seeing it. So we are carrying one another's burden. And Paul says when we do that, we are fulfilling the law of Christ. Why? Because Jesus is the one who bore my burden and your burden on Calvary. Each and every one of us, we were basically destined and just heading for the devil's hell. Jesus, he intervened. I will pay the penalty for death. Wages of sin is death. I will pay the penalty. I will pay that price. And when we help and when we support one another in that way, we're basically demonstrating our obedience to the command that Jesus gave to his disciples and to all of us that, we need to love one another. We need to love one another. It is by doing this that we best follow the example of Jesus, and we do this by bearing one another's burden. And again, it's not that I have to bear your burden. I get to. It's an honor. It's a privilege when we get to help one another. It is more blessed to give than to receive. By definition, last week we said a burden is anything that is hindering or prohibiting someone's progress. From a spiritual, biblical standpoint, it is anything that hindering our brothers or sisters' walk in Jesus Christ. Their walk in Christ. And in our text, Paul says that every one of us need to bear the burdens of those around us. We need to bear one another's burden. Why? Because every one of us have been uniquely equipped by God to do this. To do this. And let's get practical. Let's get practical. Those who know about volcanic eruption, those who have gone through volcanic eruption in the past, have been equipped now to bear the burdens of those, through the experience of their own burdens. They've been there, done that. So they're now able to come alongside those of us who have not been there, who have not had that experience, and lend a helping hand. That's all it means. That's all it means. People who have dealt with the burden of death, people who have dealt with the burden of cancer, job loss, and with COVID-19, separation, divorce, abuse, you name it. These individuals, all of us, we are now able to use the difficulty that we've been through to basically help carry the load now of those of others who are going through these same struggles in life. So the question again is, how do we do that? Think about it. What would it look like for Vincentians to bear one another's burden? We mentioned two things. First of all, we said bearing burdens mean caring when others hurt. Caring when others hurt. See, when life is filled with burdens, we show up. We're present. We're upfront. We're there. We're right there. And we don't just talk about love. I love you. Yeah, I love you. But we love specific people in specific ways. When one suffer, we all need to care. We all need to care. We all need to look after one another. Why? Because my life and my experience are fundamentally wrapped up with every Vincentian. It is. From a child growing up, that's all we know. One another. So, hey, come on, be a burden to me. Let's be a burden to one another. Because that's all we know. One another. And that's what it really means to love one another. And again, until we possess this kind of thinking, this kind of understanding, until we possess this kind of attitude, we will continue to be a people who is hesitant to share our struggles with one another. Because we're not seeing, as the body operates, that we need to operate also. As I said last week, when a part of your body is paining, you don't hear the rest of the body gang up and say, let's get rid of that. No. That's not how bodies work. Organizations work like that, but not bodies. So we have to come to that proper understanding that we are all connected, we are all in this thing together. And if we don't understand that, I am saying, I am reiterating, I'm stressing that we will continue to be hesitant to share our struggles again with one another. The word burden will continue to sound like a bad word. It'll continue to be like taboo. And we don't want to be seen as a burden to anyone else. And that's what we have been taught. That's how the word was thrown around. And that's basically how a lot of people say, me, I don't want to be a burden to nobody. Hey, be a burden to me. And I'll be a burden to you. If we don't see it that way, we'll continue to tell people when we ask, how you doing? Hey, I fine, I cool. Even though we know better. Even though we know we struggle, even though we know things hard right now. We said we need to be a nation of people where it's okay not to be fine, because right now we're not fine. Whether you're in the safe zone or you left your house in the red zone and you come to the green zone, no, we're not fine. This thing is affecting us as a people. All of us in it. So we need to learn to take care of our wounded. Not throw out the baby in the bathwater. Take care of the wounded. We said bearing burdens mean we care when people hurt. Caring when people hurt. Secondly, we said bearing burden means caring, when others have sinned. When they have fallen short. We should love one another too much. We should love one another so much that I am not going to allow you to settle, for a debased lifestyle. I'm not going to allow you to settle for that. A life of living below the standard to which God has called each and every one of us. Can you imagine that? You see your friends going wrong, doing the wrong things, and you stay quiet. Your mom, you don't have a thing to say. Sometimes you even encourage them in their skullduggery and their foolishness. That's not how it's supposed to be. That's not how it's supposed to be. And we're hearing all kind of thing on the ground. What is going on? Are you serious? And we are mindful of this and we're still encouraging the foolishness? Let's bear one another burden. Wouldn't it be great to belong to a family? To belong to a family, to a nation, who love each other so much that they simply could not look the other way when you're doing wrong or when you're caught up in a wrong? Wouldn't it be good to have some, that kind of support? I have someone there to put me back on the straight and narrow, to give me 2 tap up and let me know that's not right. Pull up my socks. Wouldn't that be good? Why? Because we all fall short from time to time. All of us, including myself. We all fall short from time to time. And when we do, we don't need condemnation. You notice we don't condemn ourselves, right? When we know we're doing wrong, we kind of justify our behavior anyway and anyhow we want. So in essence, when we fall short, and we do fall short, and when that happens, we don't need condemnation. Paul says we need restoration. Restore such a one in the spirit of meekness. As we said last week, you desperately want to be out of the water. But you need someone to come and help you to get where you need to be, which is on the shore. We need each other. We need each other. We need a place where we can be open and honest about what we're struggling with, about what we're going through. We need a place where we can encourage one another to live closer to God, to live closer to Jesus. We need a community where we can confess our faults, confess our sins to one another, and just basically, as James says, again, pray for one another. Come alongside me. I'll come alongside you. And we just help to bear one another's burden. Because believe you me, look around. This is what is most needed right here, right now. We need to bear one another's burden. So we ended last week by getting practical. By showing how do we go about creating now an environment, an atmosphere in this country, where we can basically carry one another's burden. We said, first of all, it takes trust. Because if I'm going to share with you the struggles that I'm facing, and I'm going to have to trust you. I'm going to have to trust you. We said that trust is a difficult thing to achieve. It takes a long time to build trust, but it can be destroyed in a matter of seconds, in a matter of minutes. So there are things that we can do to build that trust. When someone comes to share something with you, basically respect the confidentiality of that thing that is being shared with you. This is between you and I. If they specifically said that, fine. Even if they don't say it, it's understood. You didn't go and blast it on Facebook or some other social media. You didn't do that. You came to me and you shared this with me. That's between you and I. That's between you and I. We have to respond with gentleness rather than harshness. Because again, we all fall short. And if I'm sharing with you my struggles, based on how you respond to me, I'm going to know if I'm going to share something else with you in the future. Based on how you respond. And probably the most important thing in building trust is understanding, in sharing our struggles. Nobody wants to share what they're going through because it just looks like everybody else seems to have it all together. We walk around and we pretend that's the case. But as we know, again, there's a lot of people, who are basically facing what you and I are facing, having the same problem that we have or we're going through. They've gone through that. Basically, we're all dealing with something right here, right now in our life. So we all need trust. Bearing burdens, secondly, doesn't always mean that you fix the problem. That you fix the problem. So we talk about, men, especially, men, us with the ego. We basically have a hard time understanding this. Because again, our wives will come, they'll share something with us that happened at work, wherever. And our response is to basically give them a checklist. Well, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this, you need to do this. And they just go away, just feeling despondent, crying. Why? And we, again, with our ego problem, if you didn't want an answer, then why did you come to me? Seriously? Sometimes, you don't need to respond to the burdens of others by saying something or by coming up with the right solution to the problem. Sometimes people just want to be heard. All they need is a listening ear to know that somebody cares. Thomas came, washed away my house, got some assistance, I got another one, and all of a sudden, here comes La Soufre. And my house is gone again, the second time. Oh, well, no. I'm just sharing. I'm just sharing. They just want to know that you truly understand. That you can empathize with what they're going through at this point in time. It don't mean you get to fix the problem. It don't mean you need to give them a 10-point solution plan. They don't need that right now. All they need is a listening ear. Bear this burden with me. Thirdly, as we move on, sometimes bearing burdens, it does require some action. Sometimes it does require some action. Because if you're not careful, we can also get into the habit of just listening and not doing anything. Behaving like we're therapists. Just listening and not doing anything. John said in 1 John chapter 3 and verse 18, he says, "My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but let us love in deed and in truth. Let us not merely say that we love each other, but let us show the truth." Some translation says, by our action. By our action. And so, after listening to someone who has a burden that they decided now to share with us, there may be a practical action that is called for. What am I saying? We need to do whatever we can to be of help, to be of some help. As we said again last week, help. Don't hurt. Help. Don't hinder. Because in the end, we can't fully take someone's burden, but we could basically help them to bear it. I could help you to get through this. I could make it a little bit lighter. I can't literally take it and run with it and make it my own, but I can help you bear it. So we go back to Moses in Exodus chapter 17. Exodus chapter 7. Whenever Moses held his hands up, the Israelites were victorious in battle. Held up his hands, things good. But whenever Moses lowered his hands, the attackers would gain the upper hand. So, basically you can't hold up your hand for too long. Once you're human beings, you're going to have some problems, and that's tiredness. So when Moses' hand got tired, guess what? They came to his aid. This companion came to him. And this was the idea they got. They took a rock. Said, Moses, you sit down on this. You sit down on this rock. One grab his right hand. The other one grab his left. They stood by his side, holding his hand up until the Israelites gained victory at the end of the day. Victory at the end of the day. Now, I don't know about you, but this is a beautiful picture of the church. This is a beautiful picture of what our nation of St. Vincent could look like. Should be, ought to be. A place where we hold one another's hand when we get tired. It's overwhelming. It's heartbreaking. And we need to be there for one another. You see, we all go through those moments when we are just so tired. And in our mind, we just can't bear this anymore. Can't take this anymore. And it's at that point in time when we need someone to come and hold up our hands. It's a beautiful picture of SVG. We need to just visualize it. But we need to achieve it. We need to achieve it. Because you and I know that God has comforted us through the seasons of the pain that we went through in the past. He was there to give us that comfort. So I'm saying to us, don't be a hoarder. Ain't nobody like hoarders. Don't hoard that comfort. But be an agent and look for places and look for time where you can comfort somebody else with the comfort that you receive. Because again, look around. So many have been displaced. They don't just need food and water. Yeah, those things are important. But remember, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Give them that comfort. Okay, let's reason together. Let's think about it. Every day, you and I, we rub shoulders with people who are desperate. We rub shoulders with people who are lonely, people who are hurting. I mean, you name it. Sometimes we may not even be aware of the dark road that those individuals are traveling. Yeah, sometimes we notice, but often we don't. Why? Because maybe we're just too busy. We're just so preoccupied and overwhelmed, ourselves. But we need to be honest, because many days we might be that person. We might be those people who are desperate, those people who are hurting, those people who are lonely. And we just need somebody to notice. We just need somebody to slow down, to take the time to care. To care. And if you're still in that place of pain, that so many are, don't be too proud to be comforted and let someone else just come and help carry your burden. Carry that burden. Know that, whatever burden you may be carrying right now, right here, today, you don't have to carry it by yourself. You don't have to carry it alone. Because you and I know that most burdens are basically too heavy for any of us to carry alone. Too heavy. And thankfully we have Jesus who lifted the greatest burden of all at Calvary, the burden of our sin. And we have an opportunity right now, right here in this place, SVG, right here, one another, to bear one another's burden. We have an opportunity to be Jesus' hand, to be Jesus' heart. I really want to thank you for your time. Mindful of the situation, mindful of the circumstances. But again, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word. My name is Ron Hector. I want to thank you for your time again, and see you next week, God's willing.
Word is a lamp to my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp to my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp to my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp to my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp to my feet and a light unto my path. You're the